Best Friends with the Billionaire. Written by Liwen. Chapter 1. Noah. There were two things Noah Carter was sure of when Laurene Brooks grabbed his hand. 1, maybe the gorgeous redhead finally saw him as more than a friend, and 2, his boss was going to fire him. "Did you see Gabe's face?" Laurene squealed in delight. She continued to lead him away from her brother's Hawaiian vacation home where they were currently staying. Her 3-inch stilettos clicked against the pavement as they strode toward her gold Porsche 918 Spider parked at the end of the driveway. "Yeah, I saw it," he replied. Noah forced out a smile for Laurene's sake, but his stomach was knotted with worry. The disapproving glare Gabriel shot him moments ago when he and Laurene made their exit was burned into his memory. Noah thought Gabriel had been too distracted by the kiss he'd been sharing with an old flame of his to notice Laurene holding his hand, but no such luck. "I don't think we should have interrupted their kiss." "Oh," she replied, but it was priceless to see him caught off guard like that. Laurene dropped Noah's hand as they reached the passenger side of the car. She fished her keys out of her designer purse and tossed them to him. "Wanna drive?" Noah's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? You trust me to drive your baby?" She rolled her eyes as she placed one perfectly manicured hand on her hip. "Of course I trust you. And anyways, it's just a car. I could easily buy another one like it if I wanted to." He nodded. Wasn't that the truth? A $2.2 million car was nothing in light of Laurene's total worth as a billionaire. She had more zeros to her name than the stars in the sky. Or so it felt like it to Noah. He still couldn't wrap his mind around how wealthy the Brooks siblings were. It had taken Gabriel, Laurene, and their brother, Devin, a while to accept it, too. When their father passed away 5 years ago, he'd left a secret stash of $4 billion to his name, which he left in equal shares to his wife and children. Gabriel and Devin had immediately started their own company, hiring Noah in the process. Laurene had quit her career as a second-grade teacher and turned into a glamorous socialite. Gone was the reserved teenager he first met over a dozen years ago when he had visited Gabriel and his family during their senior year of college. In her place was a confident and attractive woman he had come to admire. Over the past year, they'd gotten to hang out often whenever she dropped by the office to see her brothers. This was the first chance, however, that he had to spend an extended amount of time with Laurene, something he had been looking forward to for a long time. Yes, it so happened that he was that guy. He'd fallen for his best friend's younger sister. To make things even more complicated, Gabriel was also his boss. So as much as Noah wanted to date Laurene, it was in his best interests to stay away from her. But he hadn't had the heart to turn her down when she asked him to go shopping today. "I'd love to drive," Noah replied. "I promise to be careful." He unlocked the car and opened the door for her. She slid in gracefully, folding her long legs to the side and smoothing out her yellow dress as she sat down. He took care to close the door, then walked around to the driver's side. Once he was behind the wheel, he turned on the ignition. The powerful engine roared to life, sending a surge of adrenaline through Noah's body. That, coupled with the sweet scent of Laurene's perfume, caused his head to spin. He couldn't believe how amazing this vacation was turning out to be. "I see now why you had your car flown in for this trip," he said to her. "I wouldn't want to drive anything else after driving this." "It is pretty sweet, isn't it?" she answered. "It sure beats the beat-up Honda I had before this." She sat back in her seat with a pleased smile. It pays to have money. Noah stepped on the gas and turned the car onto the main road. The car accelerated from 0 to 60 in a matter of seconds. He took the shades that had been hanging from the front of his polo shirt and slipped them on. The tropical breeze blowing through his window whipped through his sandy brown hair, giving him a sense of freedom he'd never known. He felt like a king driving down the empty stretch of freeway which was flanked by hills on one side and the sparkling ocean on the other. The best part of it all was the gorgeous woman by his side. He could get used to this kind of life. Especially the feel of Laurene's hand on his arm. His whole body warmed as her long, tapered fingers ran along his skin. Her touch caused his thoughts to jumble like sand in an overturned hourglass. She leaned over the center console to murmur in his ear. "Thanks for coming with me, Noah. I really appreciate your company." Her minty breath tickled his ear, but he didn't dare move. To be this close to Laurene was a dream come true. He didn't want to risk cutting the moment short. He smiled and wondered if whatever was going on between them was just a vacation fling. Of course. It's been a while since we saw each other, so this gives us a chance to catch up. I'd love that. I've really missed hanging out with you. Noah couldn't miss her flirtatious tone. Ever since Laurene had arrived at the villa yesterday, she'd been laughing at all his jokes and standing so closely they often bumped elbows. Even as a tech geek with limited dating experience, he could tell she was paying him special attention. He only wondered why. Short of his relationship with the Brooks family, he didn't have any connections to money. He wasn't the most well-spoken man or particularly handsome either. But he'd been raised to be a gentleman, so he at least had a heart of gold, as his mother liked to say. Were manners and etiquette enough to win over a billionaire's heart? If he were to try. Laurene was off limits though, he reminded himself. As much as he wanted more than friendship with her, he was going to keep his distance. Even though one look in her emerald eyes made him lose the will to fight.
Chapter 2. Laurene. If there was one thing Laurene Brooks hated to admit, it was that sometimes her brother, Gabriel, was right. She hated that he'd lectured her as soon as she'd arrived yesterday about how she was wasting her life away. Not to mention, her money as well, which she thought was a ridiculous notion, considering they had an endless supply of it. Their father may have taught them how to work hard and save while he was alive, but he'd left them set for life when he passed away. Even though he hadn't been the most affectionate man, she did miss him and the way he'd spoiled her. Out of the 3 children, it was no secret that she'd been their father's favorite. Perhaps that's why Gabe was so hard on her. Laurene turned to Noah, who seemed to be thoroughly enjoying his time behind the wheel of her car. "How's work been going for you?" He flashed her a smile that revealed a dimple in his right cheek. "It's been great. We've made some really good progress lately with our new treatment. I don't know all the details of the science behind it since I'm just the tech guy, but I'm excited. I can't believe I get to play a part in helping to cure cancer." "That's amazing, Noah. My brothers are so fortunate to have you on board." Laurene brushed a strand of hair out of her eyes, jostling the half a dozen gold and diamond bangles along her wrist. She let out a soft sigh. The new jewelry she'd splurged on recently had made her happy when she'd put them on, but now they seemed to weigh her down. Perhaps it was the mention of her brother's company that pricked her conscience. They had a worthwhile cause to invest their time and money in, but all she concerned herself with these days was filling up her closets. "What have you been up to lately?" Noah asked as he took the next exit off Queen Kahumanu Highway. "Gabe mentioned you've been busy doing retail therapy." It irked Laurene that her brother would expect nothing else of her. She fixed her eyes on her passenger side window. A sign that read Kona International Airport among tall swaying palm trees came into view. She shrugged and replied, "Just keeping myself busy. I flew to Singapore last week and Dubai the week before that. It was my first time at the Mall of the Emirates. The shops were nothing new, but their skylight was just beautiful." Thinking about all the places she was fortunate enough to visit lightened her mood. She turned to face Noah with a smile. "The entire ceiling is a glass dome, and it makes the whole mall so bright and airy. It's like being in a snow globe, minus the snow." "That sounds cool," he replied. "I'd love to see it someday. I'm sure it beats the strip mall where I shop." He chuckled. "The only time that place is lit up is during Christmas." She had to laugh. Noah was such a good sport to be going shopping with her. Not only that, he was so sweet and sincere, like a fresh breath of tropical air. He wasn't the type of guy she usually dated, but maybe that was a good thing. He didn't have the entitlement that so many of the men who were born into money had. She'd met her fair share of them when she attended various sporting and celebrity events around the world. Noah was the same guy Gabe had brought home from Harvard. Except that now at 35, he was even more handsome. She liked how he had paired a fitted white dress shirt with navy shorts and a pair of tan loafers. His outfit reflected what she liked most about him, his relaxed and friendly personality. If there was anyone she felt the most like herself with, it was Noah. She'd gotten to know him better over the past year when she visited her brother's workplace. Their interactions were casual and fun, bordering on flirtatious, but only on her side. Noah was as innocent and unassuming as they came. She had really missed him lately, but she couldn't tell him why she'd stayed away. This trip, however, was the perfect opportunity to make up for lost time. "Well, you're in for a treat today," she remarked. "Luxury Row on Kalakaua Avenue, where we're headed, is a nice little place. There's also a nearby dessert shop. I want to take you to where you can build your own ice cream sandwich." He beamed at her. "That makes 2 treats." "Well, 3 if you count the fact that I get to spend the day with you." "You are so sweet," she replied. She grinned to see the tips of his ears turn red at her compliment. "Oh, look, there's my plane." After passing through a security gate, they reached a private landing strip where a large jet waited for them. Its sleek and modern design was highlighted by a wraparound sunroof with windows the size of a typical door on a commercial plane. The inside was just as luxurious, with wooden paneling and plush white leather seats. She and Noah settled in comfortably on a couch opposite a coffee table that held a generous spread of delectable treats the staff had prepared. The entire space was bathed in the warm glow of the midday sun. Laurene squeezed her eyes shut and took deep breaths as the jet lifted off. As much as she loved to travel, she dreaded flying. Being 45,000 feet off the ground made her skin grow cold and palms sweat. She was thankful it was only a short 45 minutes from the Big Island to Oahu. A strong arm came around her shoulders, immediately bringing with it a sense of security. She opened her eyes to find Noah's blue-gray ones eyeing her with concern. "I hate flying, if you can't tell," she admitted with a sheepish smile. "I thought having all these windows would be cool. Now I can't bear to look at the view." "Pretty silly, huh?" "Not silly at all," he said. "It's rather brave of you. You're tackling a fear as we speak." With Noah by her side, Laurene did feel emboldened. She relaxed a little and released a sigh of relief. "It helps to have you here." "Thanks, Noah." Before he could respond, the jet dipped slightly, propelling Laurene straight into Noah's chest. "Oh. What's happening?" She righted herself but stayed close to his side, wrapping her arms around his trim waist. Her heart raced, whether from her fear of flying or being so close to Noah, she wasn't sure. All she knew was that it felt good to be in his arms. He held onto her more tightly. "It's just a little turbulence," he comforted her in a low, calm voice. "Don't worry. Nothing's going to stop you from shopping today." She pulled back and smiled, not missing the humor in his tone. "Promise?" "Promise," he replied. Grinning, he offered his pinky finger to her. "I'll even pinky swear on it." She laughed. "I've never seen a grown man do this before. It's something my younger sisters used to make me do when we were kids," he explained. "It's not a promise unless it's a pinky promise." "If you insist," she said. She hooked her pinky with his, enjoying the gentle tug he gave her finger. The playfulness of their contact quickly disappeared as their gazes locked. The exchange was so heated, so intense, that it sent a tingle down Laurene's back. That is until Noah suddenly let go. "Wow, look at that view." He turned to look out of the windows above them. "I've never seen anything like it." Laurene nodded as she pretended to listen to Noah describe the various shades of blue in the sky and the ocean below. The colors sounded lovely, but she didn't have the heart to appreciate them. Her stomach was twisted in knots, partly from anxiety, but more from disappointment. 1 second, Noah had been on the brink of kissing her, the next moment, he couldn't look her in the eyes. What had gone wrong?
Chapter 3. Noah. Noah could have kicked himself. Of all the things he was not supposed to do, kissing Laurene was at the top of his list. Oh, but how he'd wanted to. If it weren't for the image of Gabe's face crossing his mind the moment his and Laurene's eyes met, he would have taken her into his arms and done the deed. Thankfully, he'd caught himself just in time. But the disappointment on Laurene's face tore at his heart. She'd clammed up during the rest of the flight. It wasn't until they'd stepped foot inside Tiffany & Co. that the sparkle in her eyes returned. There was something about jewelry that made a woman happy. He'd seen his own sisters gush over the latest trends their favorite actresses wore on the red carpet, but to see them in person was a different matter altogether. For someone who didn't own more than a Fitbit, he was blown away by the merchandise displayed in the glass cases. Everything sparkled under the bright lights overhead. There were gemstones of every color of the rainbow. Necklaces dripping with diamonds and pearls. Watches that likely cost more than his trusty Ford Focus. No wonder they had a security guard manning the entrance. Even though Gabe paid him well enough, he still couldn't afford the majority of the items here. Laurene, on the other hand, was dropping money like it was on fire. "Isn't this amazing, Noah?" She pointed to a necklace boasting an incredible number of diamonds and jewels. "Do you think it looked good on me?" she asked. "Oh, for sure. Everything looks good on you," he replied with a genuine smile. Laurene could be wearing nothing but a sack and she would still make his stomach drop. "Do you want to get it?" Her eyes lit up, looking more beautiful than all the emeralds on display. "I do. I just can't decide between this or the earrings I looked at earlier." The saleswoman, an older lady with her black hair pulled back in a tight bun, chuckled. "Why choose between them? Take both. A woman of your standing deserves as much happiness as possible." Laurene hesitated for a moment as her eyes flitted between the two items, then over to her shopping bag sitting on the floor. "I don't know. I do like them both." Noah wondered why she was so hesitant. It wasn't like she couldn't afford them or the entire store for that matter. She'd had no qualms buying half a dozen new outfits at the stores they'd visited throughout the day. Why, she'd even had another one of her sports cars flown into Oahu for them to drive. He couldn't imagine anything being out of her reach. "Do you want to think about it and come back later?" he suggested. "Maybe after we get some dinner?" "There's no need to leave, dear." The saleswoman waved her hand about, as if shooing away Noah's idea. "I will bring you our special treat while you think." She soon returned with a silver platter holding 2 small desserts. The square pieces of cake were turquoise in color and wrapped up with white bows made from fondant. She presented them to Noah and Laurene with a toothy grin. "Here, please help yourself. 1 bite of these will solve all your problems." Laurene thanked her, took one of the cakes, and handed the other to Noah. He promptly placed the whole cake in his mouth while she took a delicate nibble off hers. He swallowed and nodded in satisfaction. "I didn't realize it was pound cake. That was delicious." The woman's sharply arched brows shot up on her forehead, making them look like upside-down V's. She narrowed her eyes at Noah and touted, "These are petit fours. Not pound cake." Her tone dripped with more disdain than a French accent. She wrinkled her nose in disgust and walked away without a look back. Noah winced. "Oops, I think I just insulted her petit. What were they called again?" Laurene laughed behind her hand. "Petit four." The words rolled off her tongue as if she'd been speaking French her whole life. "Ah, right, petit four." Noah rolled his eyes at his weak attempt. "I did say it was good cake though." "You did," she agreed. I don't know why she got so upset. To be fair, these are pound cakes cut up into small squares. "Well, it's obviously because I'm not sophisticated enough to know the proper term," he answered. "I actually feel the same way about someone who says YOLO instead of carpe diem. The Latin just sounds better." She gave him a good-natured grin then lowered her voice. "Well, I think she made a huff about nothing. I've had better ones in Paris. Ones that tasted much more moist and flavorful. She was about to set her piece on the platter when Noah stopped her. Hey, I'll take that if you're not going to eat it. Pound cake happens to be one of my favorite desserts. Is that so? She asked. Well, I'll definitely need to take you to Paris to try the good stuff. She flashed him a flirty smile and leaned in close, holding the cake in front of his lips. In the meantime, you'll have to settle for this. Noah gulped as he realized Laurene was offering to feed him. If this was called settling, he was more than happy to oblige. He opened his mouth and received the petit four on his tongue. His taste buds tingled in response to the sweetness, but soon, a different sensation overtook him. Laurene ran a finger across his bottom lip, leaving a scorching path in its wake. He imagined his cheeks likely resembled rubies by now. It took several seconds before he had the mental acuity to force his mouth shut and start chewing. Several emotions, from playfulness to surprise, flickered across her face as she regarded him. After a moment, she dropped her gaze with a demure smile. I think I'll go for it. Noah swallowed hard as her words sunk in. Was Laurene talking about him? About the two of them? He asked. I'm going to get it, she replied, the necklace. Oh, for sure, the necklace. He exhaled the breath he was holding. Good for you. Laurene made eye contact with the saleswoman who had been helping another customer on the other side of the store. The older woman strode over with an enthusiastic nod to complete the transaction. I'll take care of this for you, miss. With one swipe of her American Express black card, Laurene brought a wide smile to the saleswoman's face. After she had placed the receipt in a turquoise booklet envelope, she handed it to Laurene. Thank you so much for your patronage today. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you for your assistance, Laurene replied in a gracious tone. She paused to shoot Noah a mischievous grin before asking the saleswoman, would you mind if we took some of your petit fours to go? We love the taste of pound cake. Speechless for but a second, she finally spluttered, of course, miss. Noah had to bite his tongue to keep from laughing out loud. He liked Laurene even more now. The woman had a great sense of humor. He winked at her as he chimed in, we sure do. Muttering under her breath, the older woman walked away and returned with two petit fours sitting on a napkin. She handed them to Laurene. Here you are, miss. One for you, and one, she smirked, for your driver. Laurene's cheeks flushed. She gave a curt nod before turning to Noah. Let's go. Noah followed her out of the store carrying her many bags. The security guard flashed him a look of sympathy, making the pit in his stomach even heavier. Why hadn't Laurene corrected the saleswoman? Or did she only think of him as one of her hired help?
Chapter 4. Laurene. Laurene marched out of Tiffany's with Noah on her heels and headed straight for her car parked down the street. The flames coming from the cone-shaped tiki torches placed along the sidewalk lit her way. The sky was already streaked with pink and orange hues as the sun set behind them. The sight usually made her pause with gratitude, but she didn't have the heart to enjoy it this evening. Guilt weighed heavily on her shoulders. Why hadn't she spoken up in Noah's defense? Why had she allowed the saleswoman to assume he was her driver? The only reason she could think of was that shock had held her tongue. She couldn't believe how rude the elite, or those who worked with them, could be. And petty, too. Who did that woman think she was to be judging Noah's social status? She'd likely taken one look at his clothes and decided he wasn't worth her time. Even if he wasn't a paying customer, just the fact that he was with Laurene should have been enough reason to treat him with respect. A chill went down her back as that last thought crossed her mind. Respect. If she were honest with herself, she'd admit that she hadn't shown Noah the respect he deserved either. She'd been blurring the lines between friendship and something more, especially with how she'd teased him when she fed him the petit four. The memory of his face, specifically the trust and tenderness in his eyes, ate at her conscience. She could tell without a doubt that he genuinely liked her. But how did she truly feel about him? Was she just using him like the saleswoman implied? She released a heavy breath as she reached her car. Turning around, she came face to face with the very man at the heart of the matter. Noah gave her a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. That dimple of his that she loved remained hidden behind his stoic expression. He strode to her side holding several large shopping bags in each hand. She tried to meet his gaze, but he seemed to be focused on everything but her face. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, of course," he answered. He lifted the bags and asked her, "Should I put these in the trunk or the back seat?" The indifference in his tone made her chest constrict. Gone was the sweet man she had bonded with minutes ago over pound cake. In his place was someone she didn't recognize. "The trunk, please." Noah placed the bags in the trunk, then returned to her side. "So, where to now, miss?" Laurene didn't miss the formality of his words. It was time she addressed the elephant in the room. She was going to need to do major damage control if she wanted to get back in Noah's good graces. Stepping forward, she placed a hand on his chest and peered up into his face. "Noah, forget about what happened at the store. That saleswoman was being petty and rude. I couldn't believe she'd say something like that." He finally met her gaze, his eyes looking more gray than blue. With a droll laugh, he remarked, "I know. I bet she was still upset about the petit four." "Exactly," she agreed. "It's just pound cake, for crying out loud." She held up the cake still in her hand. "There are way more important things to get hung up over. Like global warming or world peace or anything else for that matter." His expression softened a little. "Yeah," he replied. "It's good cake though, I mean, it's a good petit four." Lorene's shoulders relaxed to see Noah's dimple peek out. He was such a handsome man, with a heart of gold to match. She couldn't believe he'd spent nearly 6 hours shopping with her. He had the patience of a saint to wait around while she tried on outfit after outfit, and he never complained, not even once. Gratitude overwhelmed her, prompting her to do something special in return. "You know what?" she declared. "It's been a great day of shopping, but we're not done yet. It's your turn now." He balked. "My turn? To do what?" "To shop," she exclaimed. "It'll be so much fun. We can get you a whole new outfit from head to toe." As much fun as that sounds, I'm good, really. I'm not much of a shopper. "That's what I'm here for," she stated. "I'll help you find the perfect shirt, pants, and shoes. We can even get you a watch and wallet." "Laurene, I can't." He took her hand from his chest and gave it a gentle squeeze before he let go. He waved at the stores along the street. "I can't afford this. Even if I wanted to buy something new, I wouldn't be able to shop at Gucci or Yves Saint Laurent, whatever that store is called." "Yves Saint Laurent," she finished for him with a giggle. The T at the end is silent. "Another French word, I presume?" He scoffed softly. "Me and the French don't get along, as you well know." "We don't have to go there," she insisted. "We can go somewhere else, anywhere you'd like." "It'll be my treat," she insisted with a firm nod. "You've been so sweet to go everywhere with me today, I want to do something for you." "You don't have to pay me back, Laurene. I did this willingly." Despite his casual tone, there was an intensity in his eyes. "I'm just happy to spend time with you." His words made her heart happy. "I know, but will you let me do something for you, just this once? Please. I'm doing this because I want to. And I'm not taking no for an answer," she added with a playful grin. "If you want your petit four, you're going to let me take you shopping." "Deal?" she asked. "You're using pound cake as leverage? That's not fair." He clutched at his chest, pretending to be in pain. With a sigh, he eyed the dessert she was holding up to his nose. "Can I have your piece too then?" Laurene dropped her jaw. "You want both pieces?" Pretending to ponder for a moment, she finally gave in. All right, it's a deal. But no complaining about what I pick out for you, you hear? You have to give everything I choose a fair shot, even if you don't like the style or color. You never know what looks good on you until you try it. He took one of the petit fours and popped it into his mouth. Okay, I can do that. She held out her pinky. Promise? Chuckling, he reached out his own pinky and hooked it around hers. Promise. Lorene's eyes widened as Noah pulled her hand to his mouth and planted a kiss along her knuckle. The soft touch of his lips sent a tingle straight down her spine, surprising her with its power. The pounding of her heart told her what she already knew. She was falling for Noah, hard and fast. Could it be possible to be more than friends with him?
Chapter 5. Noah. If Noah had learned one thing from shopping today, it was that clothes did make a man. Not just any clothes, but those from a high-end store like Hugo Boss. The brand was still European, but at least it had a name Noah could pronounce. Thanks to Laurene, he looked and felt like a different person in his new button-down shirt, cream-colored blazer, and cranberry shorts. He'd almost nixed the shorts when Laurene first showed them to him, but he was glad he tried them on. She was right, you had to give things a fair shot. He was thankful Laurene had decided to give the Ala Moana Center a shot too. After some hesitation, she'd agreed to go shopping at Hawaii's largest shopping mall. They had driven only a mile and a half from Luxury Row, but the prices here were more in line with what Noah was used to. And the restaurants reminded him of home. He exhaled in relief to be back in familiar territory. "How's your food taste?" he asked Laurene as he dug into his plate of Chinese food. They were sitting in the crowded food court on the first floor of the open-air mall. Noah had suggested grabbing a quick bite to eat before they flew back to the Big Island. When he learned Laurene hadn't gone to Panda Express in years, he knew he had to remedy the situation. "They don't use message, but it's still got great flavor, don't you think?" "It's not bad," she replied. She pushed her food around her oil-stained paper plate with a pair of wooden chopsticks. With narrowed eyes, she studied the wonton wrapper that had been stuffed and fried to a golden crisp in the shape of a four-petaled flower. She picked one up and took a bite, only to set it back down. "Interesting. I can't taste the crab in this." "Crab?" he repeated in surprise. "There's only cream cheese in that." "Oh." Her mouth twisted in disappointment. "The ones at Chef Chu's back home have real crab in them. Now those are really tasty, so crunchy and light, they almost melt in your mouth." Noah bit back a smile. He'd met Laurene before she became part of the 1%, and sometimes he forgot how her tastes had changed. To him, she was still the cute teenager who used to wear pink flannel pajamas and make hot chocolate from a packet. But he only had to take one look at her to see how much she'd grown up. Money aside, she was a gorgeous and sweet woman whom any man would be lucky enough to spend time with. "If you don't want it," he stated, "I'm happy to take it." When she nodded, Noah used his fork to spear the wonton off her plate. He stuffed it into his mouth with a pleased smile. "Just the way I like it. Oily and cheesy," he added with a chuckle. He rushed to eat the rest of his chow mein and orange chicken and fill up his empty stomach. A whole day of shopping probably burned as many calories as an hour at the gym. His appetite had also returned in full force after the incident at the jewelry store. Despite his earlier reservations about what Laurene thought of him, he had decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. She was being so kind and generous, treating him to a mini makeover and going along with his choice for dinner. The smiles she flashed his way made him feel rich. Not wealthy in terms of money, but in the sense that he had it all. With Laurene by his side, he could be and do anything. It was a crazy thought, but one he felt like running with. Why couldn't he pursue her? It would take some convincing on his part to reassure Gabe that he was good enough for his sister. But perhaps he could use their friendship to his advantage. He himself would appreciate knowing his sisters were dating someone he knew already rather than a stranger off the street. And if Gabe didn't approve and it made working with him awkward, then so be it. Noah could easily find another tech job in Silicon Valley, but a woman like Laurene? She was a rare gem. He felt her eyes on him, studying him with a curious smile. Sorry, I just got lost in my thoughts for a second. I could see that, she said. She tapped the tip of her chopsticks against her pink lips. Care to share? You had a smile on your face that made me think you won the lottery. His grin grew wider. It's funny you should say that. I was just thinking how fulfilled and happy I am right now. I'm eating one of my favorite dishes, wearing this great new outfit, and spending a day in paradise. He paused to swallow his nerves, with the woman of my dreams. Surprise registered in her eyes, causing her pupils to dilate. Are you talking about me? She asked. Of course I am. No other woman even comes close, he added as he lowered his gaze. Bearing his soul like this in a crowded mall hadn't been on his vacation to-do list, but it was now the most important thing on his mind. He hesitated to look up, afraid of what he would see. What if he had read Laurene's signals all wrong? What if she was only interested in some temporary fun? A warm hand covered his on the table, drawing his attention up to a pair of vibrant green eyes. I'm flattered, Noah, I really am. He swallowed hard and waited for the but that he feared would follow. I think, she paused to lick her lips, I feel the same way. Laurene's words resounded loudly in his ears even amidst the clamor in the food court. Two small girls ran by, chasing each other in and around the round tables and chairs. Noah hardly heard their screams as they fought over a stuffed toy. All his attention was devoted to the woman who was gazing lovingly at him. Laurie Brooks. Both their heads turned in the direction of a young woman who happened to be walking by. Dressed in a matching athletic top and bottom, she looked to be in her early 30s. Her long dark brown hair had been pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and her cheeks were flushed pink. Kylie Martin. Laurene pulled back her hand from Noah's and faced the woman. She crossed her arms across her chest, her expression suddenly guarded. I always wondered what happened to you after graduation. Are you here on vacation? You could say that, she replied. Kylie's jaw dropped as she gave Laurene a quick once-over. She didn't try to hide her shock at seeing all the pieces of shiny jewelry. You look amazing. Wow, that necklace must have cost a fortune. I take it your family's doing well. Laurene frowned at the comment, but she quickly recovered. We're doing fine, thank you. Noah sat quietly, all the while watching the two women size each other up. He didn't need a degree in psychology to know there was some underlying resentment at play. The exchange reminded him of a catfight where both sides had their claws drawn. He decided to speak up in hopes of diffusing the situation. Hi there, I'm Noah. He offered his hand to Kylie. You must be an old friend of Laurene's. We were classmates at Eden Prep, she replied. Kylie edged closer to Noah and shook his hand. I love your outfit. Only a real man could pull off those shorts. Thanks. Noah beamed. Laurene picked them out for me. They're not my usual style, but I trust her judgment. Cute and smart. Kylie gushed. You got a good one, Laurie. Actually, Laurene cut in abruptly, Noah works with my brothers. We're on vacation here together. Kylie's expression softened, as did her tone. Devin's here? She asked. In Oahu. We're staying on the Big Island, Laurene answered. Speaking of which, we should get back before they wonder what happened to us. She nodded to Noah and stood up. It was nice seeing you, Kylie. Noah rose, bewildered by Laurene's sudden urge to leave. Regardless, he gathered up their used plates and utensils and deposited them into the nearest trash can. He shot Kylie a small smile as he followed Laurene out of the food court. He caught up to her on the sidewalk leading to the parking lot. Laurene, wait up. Are you okay? What happened back there? A line formed between her brows as her mouth twisted to the side. She blew out a breath and shook her head. It doesn't matter. I shouldn't have let her get to me after all these years. I take it you and Kylie weren't close? He asked. I only knew her because she and Devin dated for a while. She didn't think he was good enough for her, so it didn't last. Her voice wavered as she continued speaking. Which is why, she paused, I don't think it's going to work out for us either. I'm sorry, Noah. What are you talking about? For the second time that day, he found himself confused by Laurene's words and actions. Why had she suddenly changed her mind about him? I don't understand. I thought we were having fun together. We were, but it wouldn't work out for us long term, she replied. We're just too different. Too different. The doubt that had been building in the back of his mind all day came rushing to the forefront. What are you saying? It's just that, she began with a sigh, we have such different tastes. And the way we live is completely different, I get it, he stated. Noah winced as the reality of the situation weighed on his shoulders. You don't mind me tagging along so I can drive you around and carry your bags, but you don't want to be seen with me otherwise. Noah, that's not what I meant. She reached out to place a hand on his arm. It's complicated. Is that why you wanted to make me over? He asked. So I'd look more acceptable for you. No. That's not why, he cut her off with a shake of his head and stepped back from her touch. Never mind. You're right. We're better off as friends. It was more clear than ever that Laurene had only been stringing him along. The realization left a bitter taste in his mouth but also set him on a new path. If she didn't think he was good enough to date her, it was time to lick his wounds and move on.
Chapter 6. Laurene. Laurene was certain of one thing, that she'd messed up with Noah, again. Right when he'd been pouring out his heart to her, she'd gone and trampled on it. If only her old high school classmate hadn't shown up when she did. She and Noah could be holding hands now, walking along the private beach behind Gabe's villa, instead of being holed up in their respective rooms alone. Noah had been upset since they climbed into her private jet to fly back to the Big Island. He had clammed up, keeping his answers formal and short. Even as he drove her back to the villa, he gripped the steering wheel tightly with his hands, his posture stiff and tense. Neither of them enjoyed that car ride home. He'd brought her bags up to the house and promptly bid her good night. Being alone in her room was just about driving Laurene crazy. Desperate for someone to talk to, she made her way downstairs to the kitchen. The staff had retired for the night, but they had left dessert in the refrigerator. She grabbed a spoon from a drawer, took out a dish of chilled pineapple mousse topped with pistachios, and sat down on a bar stool. The sound of footsteps approached, and she looked up to find her brother, Devon, in the entryway of the kitchen. He looked like he'd just emerged from a dip in the pool, wearing a fluffy white robe that barely covered half of his 6'3" frame. With a playful grin on his chiseled face, he strode over and shook his head of chestnut brown hair in Laurene's face. I didn't know you were still up. Laurene shrieked as cold water droplets fell on her. Dev, stop. She exclaimed. How is it that you just turned 30, but you still act like a 5-year-old? He laughed. Someone's gotta keep you and Gabe on your toes. He took a seat next to her and dipped his finger into her cream-colored dessert. With a swift motion, he scooped up some mousse and stuck it in his mouth. What are you doing up at midnight? He asked. It's 3 a.m. back in California. I expected you to be in bed hours ago, not out all day with your new boy toy, he added with a smirk. Excuse me? Noah is not my boy toy. Laurene blew at a strand of hair that had fallen out of her messy bun into her eyes. He's a really great guy. And now I've gone and blown things with him. He gave her a sympathetic look. What happened? She rolled her eyes. Her younger brother was the last person she wanted to talk to about relationships, but all her girlfriends were fast asleep back home. Well, I first let a saleswoman at Tiffany's think he was my driver. Then I dissed him in front of your ex-girlfriend, who we happened to bump into on Oahu. Excuse me, he asked. Kylie asked if we were together and I said no, even though just a moment earlier I had told him yes. You saw Kylie Martin, he exclaimed. That's beside the point, Dev. If she didn't know better, she'd think her brother was still hung up on the girl who dumped him so many years ago. Can we focus here? You're supposed to be giving me advice about Noah. Yeah. Devin shook his head as if clearing his mind of some bad memories. He narrowed his eyes and faced her squarely. So, why are you having such a hard time owning up to how you feel about him? He asked. That's a good question. Laurene tapped her French manicured nails on the marble counter. I don't know, she replied. At first I was just out to have a good time. Then the more time I spent with Noah, the more I liked him and respected him. He's not like the other guys I've fallen for before. I like it that he doesn't depend on his money or status. He's real. But? Devin asked. She didn't like the smirk on Devin's face, as if he knew there was more to the story. There's always a but, huh, she sighed. With you, yes. Laurene couldn't help sticking her tongue out at him like she used to do when they were kids. But, he's not like the guys I'm used to dating. What if he gets to know me and finds out I'm just a spoiled rich girl who only likes to shop? Seeing Kylie reminded me of how much I hated being on the outside during high school. I could never be good enough for the kids who were born rich. Money was always an issue in my friendships then. I don't ever want Noah to feel like he's not good enough. But don't you see, money will always be an issue for us. Devin shook his head adamantly. Only if you let it be. You were the one who made yourself feel inferior to the rich kids at school, not them. Who cares what they said or thought? You knew the truth. We had as much right to be at Eden Prep as they did, even more so since our grades, not money or connections, got us in. Don't worry about Noah feeling inferior. Worry about yourself and your own superiority complex, he added with a wink. Laurene stopped chewing and swallowed her mouthful of mousse, along with a hearty helping of humble pie. Every word Devin said was on point. She did have some nerve assuming Noah felt inferior to her. Who did she think she was anyway? Being wealthy didn't mean she was better. If anything, Noah was the more considerate, kind, and generous one of the two of them. She needed to stop letting money be her hang-up. There were more important things to be passionate about. Thank you, Dev. You may behave like a kid, but you have the wisdom of an old man. He scoffed. I'll take that as a compliment. Oh, in case you're wondering, Noah's out by the pool. Laurene hopped off her stool and gave her brother a quick peck on the cheek before heading out of the kitchen. She knew exactly what she needed to do to get back in Noah's good graces.
Chapter 7. Noah. Noah knew he'd lost the battle as soon as he spotted Laurene walking out of the villa doors leading to the pool. Even in the near darkness, he had no trouble making out her petite form. Walking barefoot, she made her way across the manicured lawn and past an impressive stone fountain featuring 2 dancing dolphin statues. The light from the fountain lit up her hair that cascaded down her back like a crimson waterfall. He forced his eyes away, but the image of her black strapless swimsuit was already etched into his mind. How its plunging neckline and mesh cutouts on both sides of her waist highlighted her curves. And the demure yet hopeful smile on her red lips when she saw him sitting in the far end of the infinity pool overlooking the Pacific. Oh, how he wanted to distance himself from Laurene, but it was hard to do so when he was still every bit as attracted to her. Now the attraction had turned into a very tangible need to be close to the woman who had captured his heart. She reached the water's edge and dipped one foot in. Would you care for some company? She asked. He raised his head at the sound of her hesitant voice. His mouth went dry at the sight of her, and he had to lick his lips to speak. Sure. He might as well wave a white flag and let Laurene declare victory. But what was she here for? To play with his heart some more or to make up? He steeled himself, wary of the answer. Either way, he would have a hard time saying no to her. She approached slowly, wading through the water until it reached her shoulders. With numerous fiber optic lights shining beneath the surface of the pool, Laurene appeared to be walking among stars. Her eyes, full of regret, never left his. When she came face to face with him, she stopped and took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology, Noah." Noah quirked a brow. "What for?" "For so many things," she replied. "For not making it clear to the saleswoman at Tiffany's that you weren't my driver. For cutting you off at the mall when you were trying to defend me. But most of all, for not giving you a chance. I assumed things about you that I shouldn't have. You're the kindest and most genuine man I know, a true gentleman. I respect you so much, Noah. I'm sorry I didn't make you feel that way today." Laurene's confession warmed his body even more than the heated water of the pool. But as much as he wanted to pull her into his arms and forget everything that had happened that day, he couldn't. What she had said still rang in his ears. Noah gazed out into the dark waters of the ocean, feeling his heart being tossed about like a boat in a storm. Their differences, both financially and socially, were as vast as the ocean itself. What if she got tired of him one day when the newness of the relationship died down? If he couldn't pamper her the way she was used to and the way she deserved, would she lose respect for him? With resignation, he stretched out both arms to rest on the pool's invisible ledge and turned to meet Laurene's eyes. "I appreciate your apology," he stated, "I truly do. But you were right about what you said. We are different. I live in a condo and drive a second-hand car. I wear department store brands and buy pound cake from the supermarket. I like eating mall food. But you deserve the best there is. I wish I had the means to give you everything, but I don't." With a firm shake of his head, he added, "I'm not the man you want, Laurene." She stepped forward, causing the water to splash about with her sudden movement. Her green eyes held a mixture of sadness and longing. When she spoke, her voice trembled with emotion. "Noah, you're the man I need. I like who I am around you. You make me want to be a better person. You remind me that there's so much more to life than wealth or possessions. I don't care where you live or what you drive. I like what you wear and the foods you eat." He sighed. "You say that now, Laurene, but one of these days, money will be an issue. And it's not an issue that can be easily resolved. I'll never be a billionaire, I'm not sure I'd want to even if I could. And you will no doubt always be richer than me." He paused and frowned. "There's not much we can change about the situation." "But, Noah, that's the thing," she declared. "I fell for you. The friend Gabe brought home from college. The guy who talked to me like a real person and not his friend's silly little sister. The guy who helped me study for my calculus final when he could have been watching a movie instead." Her lips curved up in a playful smile. "Didn't you ever wonder why I dropped by the office every week after you started working with Gabe and Dev? Why I always brought food for you and not my brothers?" He raised a brow. "You always said you were out shopping in the neighborhood and happened to have leftovers from lunch. The closest mall to the office is 15 minutes away in Milpitas," she replied. "And I always brought you a full entree with a drink and a dessert." She gave him a pointed look. "Those were just excuses. I came to see you, Noah." He chuckled. For someone with an Ivy League education, he sure was dense. "Now that you put it that way, I guess it's kind of obvious what your intentions were. But why did you stop coming around? It's been a month since you last visited. I thought maybe you'd met someone." She shook her head. "You can blame Gabe for my absence. Big Brother gave me a lecture and told me I needed to figure out what I was doing with my life. He said it was time I stopped wasting my days doing nothing and also to stop distracting you from doing your job. I didn't want to get you into trouble, so I stayed away. But when I heard you were coming on vacation with us, I thought it'd be the perfect opportunity to spend time together. And it was until I went and messed everything up." She sighed. "Can we have a do-over? Please?" Noah's heart raced with anticipation. He schemed his hands over the water as he reached for her, pulling her warm body to his. He almost couldn't believe Laurene was in his arms, but her sweet scent surrounded him, confirming her presence. "What do you have in mind?" he murmured into her ear. She replied softly. Laurene relaxed against him and nuzzled her nose into the crook of his neck. She took her time answering, seeming to enjoy just being close to him. When she did pull back, she gave him a dazzling smile. "How about we get some frozen pound cake and Chinese takeout and stay up and talk?" she suggested. "We can do that." He cupped her cheek and caressed it with the pad of his thumb. Laurene leaned into his palm, a serene look on her face. His breath hitched to see her beauty in the moonlight. He only had one desire to fulfill. "What if we add in a kiss, too?" he asked. She pretended to think for a moment. "That would have to be a do once, not a do-over, since we've never kissed before." "Then maybe we should start," Noah whispered against her mouth. As soon as their lips met, a fire ignited in his body. He claimed her mouth with his, aiming to discover everything he could about her touch and taste. The kiss was soft, warm, and, most of all, inviting. She drew him in, wrapping her arms around his neck as they exchanged breath for breath and dreams for reality. Kissing Laurene was everything he had hoped for and more. When they parted, he was sure her lovesick smile mirrored his own. She sighed as she trailed a finger down his wet chest. "Now that we've gotten our first kiss out of the way, we can have our do-over now," she stated. "I like the sound of that," Noah quickly replied and moved in to bridge the distance between their lips. He couldn't believe how much their friendship had shifted in just a matter of hours. But it'd been a long time coming. They just had one more hurdle to get past. He broke off their kiss with a wistful smile. "Sorry to kill the mood, but we should probably think about how we're going to break the news to Gabe. Because I'd very much like to have his blessing to date you." "No worries. Just leave that part to me," Laurene touted as she leaned in. "Now, no more talking about my brother. We have more kissing to do." Noah gladly complied as he pulled her into his arms again.
Chapter 8. Laurene. Laurene took one look at Gabe on the laptop screen and knew she'd have no trouble convincing him that she and Noah were meant to be together. She had decided to break the news to him as soon as the sun had risen in Hawaii. According to Devon, their older brother had cut his vacation short and flown back to California already. She could only assume he'd worked things out with the woman she and Noah had caught him kissing the other day. She was thrilled for Gabe to have found someone who could be his equal. Plus, his good fortune would work in her favor. Her older brother was the happiest she'd ever seen him. He hardly paid attention to his computer screen as they chatted via video conference. His focus was fully directed at the beautiful blonde sitting beside him. Laurene turned to Noah, who sat on the other end of the plush leather sofa in the villa's spacious living room. He'd purposely angled himself away from her cell phone screen so as not to appear on camera. She shot him a mischievous grin and blew him a kiss, knowing full well Gabe wouldn't even notice. Noah pretended to capture her kiss with his hand and put it into his shirt pocket. He then gave her a thumbs up and mouthed the words, "We're in this together. No matter what." She sighed happily. After their sleepless night of talking and eating, he still managed to look as handsome as ever. His tousled hair and swoony grin made her heart skip a beat. She was more than grateful he had decided to give her a second chance. They'd come to an agreement that regardless of what Gabe said, they vowed to stay together. Nothing could stand in their way, not even an overprotective brother. With determination, she mouthed back, "No matter what." "Sorry, sis," Gabe asked, "what were you saying?" She tore her eyes away from Noah's and faced the phone screen. Gabe was finally a little more alert. She took a deep breath and began her spiel. "I was saying, big brother, that you don't have to worry anymore about me wasting my life and money away. I figured out a lot of things since we last talked." "All right," he replied. "I like the sound of that. Do enlighten me." "I spent the last month reevaluating my priorities like you suggested, and I've decided to return to my first love." "You're going back to teaching?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, but close. I want to start a nonprofit to provide technical resources to students, specifically computers, tablets, and smartboards. I've already reached out to my old school and others in the same district. They've expressed a lot of interest. I'll need your help though to find the right people to connect with to get this off the ground. Gabe nodded thoughtfully as he listened. That sounds like a great plan. I'd be happy to help. I've got a few connections in Silicon Valley who would be great with this. I'll help, too. Laurene, Serafina chimed in beside him. It's wonderful how you're able to tie in your passion with this project. Thank you, Sarah, she replied. As much as I love teaching, I hope to reach even more kids and make a greater impact this way. Say, is Noah around? Gabe asked. He'd be a good person to start with. He's my go-to-tech guy. I'm sure he knows which gadgets are worth checking out. Laurene grinned and slid across the couch to Noah. She aimed the phone in his direction. As a matter of fact, he is. He helped me do some brainstorming last night. Gabe's brows drew together. Did he now? Hey, Gabe. Good to see you again, Sarah, Noah greeted them with a nervous chuckle. Is there something I need to know? Gabe asked in an almost ominous tone. What else did the two of you do yesterday? Nothing that you and Sarah wouldn't do, Laurene quipped. In fact, we may have gotten some inspiration from you guys. You know, what the two of you were doing the last time we saw you together. Serafina laughed. Oh, she got you good, Gabe. We did a lot of talking, Gabe, Noah insisted earnestly. Just talking. Well, also another activity that required our mouths. I got it, Gabe cut in with a pained expression. That's quite enough information, thank you. His gaze flitted from Laurene's face to Noah's and back again. My little sister and my best friend. I had a feeling this day would come. I suppose if I had to pick a guy for you, Laurene, it would be Noah. He's as tried and true as they come. Just do me a favor and keep the details of your, he grimaced, activities to yourselves. Of course, big brother. Laurene gave Gabe a cheeky smile and reached over for Noah's hand. On that note, we're going to sign off here and do something that you're not going to want to hear about. You guys have fun. I'll be sure to keep your brother distracted and out of your hair, Sarah added with a wink. Laurene laughed. Thanks. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Noah placed an arm around her and pulled her close. That went better than I expected. All thanks to the power of love, she stated. Laurene snuggled into his side and leaned her head on his firm chest. Being this close to Noah, with his masculine scent filling her senses, made her giddy. It's definitely more powerful than money. But it doesn't hurt to have both. I suppose not, he replied. Noah placed a gentle kiss on the top of her head. But I'd take love over money any day. I know. She believed Noah meant every word. That was the kind of guy he was, genuine, down to earth, and sweet, and exactly why she had fallen for him. That's why I love you, she stated. Noah's chest rose as he inhaled quickly. Did you say you love me? Laurene glanced up, her cheeks flushing under his intense gaze. I did, didn't I? I just meant that's something I love about you. There's no need to explain. Noah smiled tenderly as he tipped her chin up. I love you, too, Laurene. You're the best thing to happen to me. That was all she needed to hear as she took his face with both hands and brought her mouth to his. She'd never get enough of Noah's kisses. He poured so much of himself into each touch, capturing her heart more and more. Who needed retail therapy anymore? Not her. Not when she now had more passion and purpose in her life. And it was all because of this man who had offered her what money couldn't buy, the love of a lifetime. Thank you so much for listening to this audiobook. To find out more about Liwen Ho's other books, please visit her website at liwenho.com. And be sure to subscribe to this channel so you'll be notified when a new audiobook releases.